Thanks for tuning in to another NASCAR program here on either the Prime Sports Network YouTube channel or Mystery Caution. This is to let you know, and we've, of course, given you these hints over the past few months leading up to the end of the 2024 season that we would be moving to another channel. We've already made the move. We are now over at Proline TV. There's a link in the description. Please check that link out. Give it a click. You go to the new channel, and you're going to find out where all of our NASCAR coverage is going to be. We're going to have an additional handicapper this season. You might be familiar with him. Maybe you're not, but that's going to give us some more opinions. So that's really great. But we're looking forward to another great 2025. So once again, for all of your coverage, check out the Proline TV channel. Link in the description. Let us know if you have any questions or comments or anything that you need help with. As far as getting you over there, should be a simple process. And of course, make sure to subscribe once you're over to Proline TV so you never miss one of our NASCAR 2025 or F1 shows, along with CJ Verdun, of course, from rotowire.com. And I'm Greg DePalma. So let's go ahead and let's get on with the show. So you don't miss anything else that we're saying here. But don't forget, if you want to watch everything that we said on this video and all the other videos that we produced just recently, check out Proline TV. And that is to make predictions on the season. So here are the odds to win the championship. And what we're going to do is we got 10 questions that we're going to answer and make predictions for. And so you can take a look at, because the odds are going to be important here as we do this. And the questions are going to be, they're going to range from championship pick, round of 8 pick, round of 4 picks, sleeper picks, championship picks, and which drivers that did not make the playoffs last year that you think will, and vice versa. So there's a bunch of those types of questions as we scroll down the line here. And you can, of course, check out these odds over at DraftKings.com. I'll try to put a link in the description for this. So again, these are all championship odds only that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so first question. And when I was looking at these odds, the biggest differences, here were the biggest differences from last year to this year. Okay, let's see. Where is he? So Kyle Busch last year was 14-1. So now he's 22-1. Brad Keselowski last year was 16-1. He's now 28-1. Chris Buescher last year was 20-1. He's now 40-1.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah. And maybe the biggest one, where is he? There he is. Chase Briscoe last year was 100-1.
That's not surprising.
Yeah. So now he's 18.
Buescher for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the biggest changes. And the last three champions, their odds were 11-1, 11-1, 12-1. So it wasn't any of the single digit drivers. Meaning maybe this is your guy right here, Chase Elliott, 11-1.
We did not talk in advance, but that probably gives you a preview of who I chose.
Oh, I like it. Maybe I'm going to change my mind too. Well, you've already made it, so I'll stick with mine. All right. I like that. So Chase Elliott does seem like a really good play on trends over the last 3 years with championship odds. All right. So let's go with first question. Which drivers who didn't make the playoffs in 2024, CJ, do you believe will make it in 2025? So
I think
let me know what you got.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because I think there's going to be a lot of change within the top 16 this year. We had some surprises last year. We've got a lot of people on new teams. We've got people that have left the series, etc. So that means there are a lot of opportunities for guys and people who didn't get in last year to work their way in this year. So top of my list, there are 2 names that immediately jump to the top of my thought process, and that's Kyle Busch and Bubba Wallace. I think both of those drivers are race winning capable drivers that just need to get it done before the playoff series starts. And obviously they would work their way in. Busch, we talked a lot about his slow start to last year. He was really coming on at the end of the year. Wallace just got a contract extension and his teammate has been doing extremely well. So he knows he has to step up. And then if you want to throw two more names in that conversation that I think were a little bit underperforming in 24, hopefully they step up in 25. I would also throw Chris Buescher and Ross Chastain into that conversation.
Okay. Now, keep this in mind to make it easy for us. Two drivers are not basically opened up a spot for us. That's Burton and Truex.
Yep.
So that means that, okay, they're going to make it easy, meaning we could put two in if we want to keep everybody else. But if we want to eliminate anyone, then that's where the third driver would come from. Now, I have three drivers. Okay. How many did you end up with?
I ended up with 4.
All 4 of those.
Yep.
So that means that, well, actually, we can wait until the next question because that might come into play there.
Means I have to boot 1.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to agree with you with 2 of those because, again, I agree with 3 of them. So I don't think it was very difficult for me or for you. So I agree with Kyle Busch, Chastain, and Buescher. I just could not. Wallace was obviously the last one in that I just couldn't find a way in. And that's only because there are a couple of drivers that maybe you don't have that I do. Because I do think there would be a couple of surprises, as there always are. And boy, when you look over this list, especially when you have to get down to like even the final 8 drivers, it just shows you how competitive right now the sport is. It's like really hard to because you can't just take all the top 8 drivers. It doesn't work out that way. Some driver or two is going to make their way in that nobody expected. You have to take in consideration. You don't have to, but you should. So it's really difficult to find how do I, if I have a sleeper or two to make the 8, who am I kicking out? So it's one of those things where you're just going to get lucky if you actually make those predictions and they come true. Okay. Second question. Which driver or drivers who made the playoffs in 2024 will not make the playoffs in 2025? Now, this one I thought was a little bit easier, only because of the fact that when you take a look at the options, and I'm only talking about the how could you pick a guy like, sort of like if we would, Kyle Busch, and then he actually didn't make it. It's very hard for any of us to actually go out on a limb and pick one of these guys to not make the playoffs. So if you go away from the name guys, then, maybe you go into Bowman, Cindric, Suarez, maybe Briscoe and Gibbs. It's probably coming from there, unless you're going to go crazy. And again, it could be drivers. I only did 1. Because it was hard. I couldn't do any of the other ones. So all right, I'm gonna have to do this guy. I'll go first. You went first the last time. So I just knocked out Daniel Suarez. That's it. That's the only driver. And I couldn't do it with anyone else. So how many drivers did you knock out?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be entertaining anyone today because we seem to be aligned. I also took out Suarez.
Wow.
Only won 1 race last year. He was competitive in quite a few others. It's going to take something special, I think, for him to maintain that winning streak and do it before the playoff line. Not to say he's not going to win a race at all this season because there are the 10 playoff races. Could easily win one of those as well. I think it's just going to be harder this year for him to find a way in. I did have Bowman as a controversial pick, not getting through. The reason I have to go with Suarez over Bowman is that Bowman can look like crap and win that day. Somehow he tends to do it. And he does it multiple times, it seems like, every season. And then if I wanted to be really controversial, Joey Logano had so much success last year and he has so much success on the even years, and it's every other year that he performs. And it seems like the year after he performs, he hits a rough patch.
Okay.
I'm going to go controversial. I might even consider Joey Logano not making the playoffs this year.
All right. But you're going to stick to one driver.
I'm going to stick to one, and that's Daniel Suarez.
Okay. But as you just said, if you were forced to, and you had to add 2 more drivers, you would put in Bowman and Logano.
Correct.
Okay. And by the way, you probably would have to along the lines because that's just the way it would work out. But that's not the way the question was posed. So you can answer that for yourself, everybody. I think you understand where I'm going from here based on the fact that we had to move in 4 new drivers. So at least one more driver out of, CJ actually really has to add another driver because he put in that extra driver I only put 3, so I only had to add 1. But CJ's telling you pretty much where he would go with that. Okay. Next question. Which driver will be this season's version of Harrison Burton? Now that means, you win a race, could be fluky, could be not, it could be a road course, could be a super speedway. And you get to the playoffs and really if it wasn't for the win, you would have been in second place or something like that. But again, that's up to you. I'm leaving it open to interpretation. Obviously, you could put in whoever you want that you just feel, all right, they got to win. I don't expect much else from them. They're eliminated right away, and no one's going to be surprised by that. So, CJ, I only had again. This is just one driver, but you can say as many drivers as you want here. But it's kind of hard for these drivers to win a race that aren't good enough. So, force you to do at least one. Who'd you do?
I actually have 2.
Okay.
I'll start off by saying I did not go the road course route as well. I think that would be too easy because then you'd be talking about AJ Allmendinger and Shane Van Gisbergen. And I do think both of those can potentially make the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them won a race, a road course or not. But I also think both of those guys, if they get into the playoffs, could very well advance, even though
I agree.
Of course, in that first round. So I think those 2 would be the easy choices. I think if you think about it a little bit more, though, I have to come up with somebody like a Carson Hocevar or Noah Gragson. I think Hocevar showed a ton of promise last year, and with a year under his belt, more experience, ready to go right from the get-go this year, I think he's going to be somebody to look out for. And I think Noah Gragson getting another shot. We know how great he was in the Xfinity series. He's been really good and impressive at times in the Cup series as well. I think he's another one that could sneak out a win. I think it would be harder for either of those guys compared to Allmendinger or Van Gisbergen to advance beyond the first round. So that's why I put Carson Hocevar and Noah Gragson as my answers here.
Like them both. We both talked about how good, as you mentioned, Hocevar for a rookie surprised us of how good he looked. That would not be a surprise if you can keep that. Sometimes it's hard. You have a good rookie season and then you have that little bounce back the other way. We've seen that happen a lot, but hopefully he's one of those drivers that can just keep on going. And Noah, his rookie season was just a wash. But last year he did show improvement. So, and he's somebody that, maybe another year or two, we could see Noah in the same boat as a lot of the drivers that we're going to talk about on a regular basis to make the playoffs. So maybe Hocevar as well. Okay. I only, how many did I do? I did just 1. And I'm going to this is a little bit from left field, but I just figured why not? Because there was so many to choose from in reality. And I didn't want to go with the Hocevar Gragson because I actually think that they could be better than that.
Yeah.
So, maybe they can get to the next round. So I decided to go a little bit further down the road and go with Cole Custer.
Oh, that's a good one.
So, Custer's getting a chance again. He definitely deserves it. But again, he's a one-teamer. So couldn't he come up and surprise? Why not? He surprised everybody a few years ago when he won a race. So I think he could do it again. So, and maybe Cole Custer, if he does really well this year, especially if he gets a win, maybe he'll get a better job somewhere. So that's my pick.
I like it.
Next one. Which driver will make the biggest advancement from 2024 to 2025? So there's a lot of different options here. I go first. So maybe this is taking the easy way out, but maybe not, because it all depends on exactly where you think he could go. And I do think and expect Kyle Busch to make an impact this year. I just don't think he's done. I can't see it happen that fast. And so I think he's too dogged and determined, and he's a winner. So I think he's had the whole offseason to figure things out. It's not about going out there and getting a win. It's about going out and being competitive for a championship team. And now he's had time with the card and all that other stuff. So I'm gonna maybe take the easy way out and go with Kyle Busch. I have some others, but he was the one that made the most sense as my driver overall. So which way are you going?
I have Busch on my list as well. I think he is a very, I don't know that I'd call it an easy answer because last year was such a struggle, but I think he's a relatively obvious or apparent answer. The other one I think that falls into a similar category that has more questions around him would be a Ty Gibbs. I think Ty Gibbs has a crap ton of potential that he is not living up to yet in the Cup Series, specifically with the car and the organization that he's driving for. He has yet to win a race. So I think Gibbs and Busch both need to be in that conversation. And another foreshadow of who I've got for my championship pick, I also slightly have behind a Chase Elliott. Yeah, he made it to the playoffs, but he only won one race. I think that his potential in 2025 is significantly more races, maybe 3 or 4, and probably even more than that if he goes on a good streak and potentially goes on that championship run. So I think you could also throw Chase Elliott into that conversation. You kind of have to define what your definition of biggest advancement is, but I think my 2 main answers would be Kyle Busch and Ty Gibbs.
Yeah, if I was taking someone like from after Kyle Busch, like all those not name drivers or former championship drivers, but just all the rest, that the Gregsons of the world, the Hosevars of the world, and all the others. If I was taking one of those guys, I might take Eric Jones. The only thing is I just don't know about the team. I don't know if the team is capable, but Eric Jones just is way too talented to have another year like that. So
I agree. And I actually consider Jones as a potential one that could find his way in an off win to get into that championship, but then not advance. But again, like you, I just have so many questions around the organization that he's driving for and whether they have the ability to give him the car and the team that they need to actually perform.
Okay. Now let's go the opposite. Which driver do you think will make the biggest decline from last year to this year?
This one's obvious.
What's that?
To me, this one is obvious. He's got this to fall. It's an odd year, and he has a history of not performing after he does really well, and that's Joey Logano. So I do think he's going to be in for a tough year. I think that he is a fantastic driver. He's multiple times champion, certainly a race winner, etc. But I think in comparison to what he was able to do last year, I just don't see him being able to replicate that. So I think that he's got the most to lose. So therefore, for me, the obvious answer is Joey Logano.
Yeah. He had so many things go his way. Mm-hmm. First of all, the Bowman disqualification to keep him going, and the whole thing that everybody he was like the poster boy for a lot of the angst by NASCAR fans about the whole setup with the playoffs. Yep. And then he goes on and wins. They were just as angry that he was even there. Mm-hmm. And then he goes out and wins. So I think he really, there was a lot of luck or whatever you want to just, anything, sprinkled all over him last year that he has to give some of that back to make life a little bit even. And that's where I think Joey Logano makes a lot of sense, as maybe this is just not going to be his year. Okay, I'm going to go with one of his former teammates. I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski. There's something I don't know. I'm getting a feeling that there's some danger there with Keselowski. We know how talented a driver he is and all of that. He can go out there, he can win 2 or 3 times this year, he can be in the Final Four, and none of us would be surprised. But there's just he didn't get to that point that I ever expected him to get to, especially around playoff time. And I was very disappointed with his effort in the playoffs, or results in the playoffs. Of course, that's a better word. And so maybe that's a carryover. If you look at it, really, he had that great start to the season. And then right around the midway point, I think it was right after he finished first, second, and third, at Darlington, and then I think Gateway was the third. Right after that, he had 2 more top 5s, I believe, the rest of the season. So he's got to pick things back up, but I think he's in the age and with the new team for a couple of years that if you're looking for someone that may have a little bit of an issue going the wrong way, it might be Keselowski. And I think it's interesting that if you look at it, Keselowski's, what was odds again? So Keselowski's odds to win the championship are 28-1 and Buescher's 40-1. And if I had to take either one of them, I would definitely, I'd go with the odds. I would just take Buescher because I don't see a big difference between either one of them, to tell you the truth.
I think with what you just laid out, the reason probably Keselowski didn't hit my radar is because I was already disappointed with what he did. So how much further can he fall? Buescher, I think, still has a lot of headroom to grow into as well. He was multiple-time race winner, very competitive on tracks that you don't necessarily expect him to be competitive at either. So I could easily see Buescher having a very good year, getting into the playoffs, winning a race or two. And then who knows what happens when you get into that playoff format. And he's one that can find a way to advance. He's done it before. And then if you're getting almost twice the odds of a Keselowski, who was disappointing last year, quite frankly, I agree with you, had potential, but then seemed to have lost it toward the end of the year, then why wouldn't you go with Buescher?
Again, there's the odds there, Keselowski and Buescher. Okay, now the next question. So I have to line this up here. Okay. Give me your round of 8 sleeper. Okay, now this has to be a driver with odds of 65-1 or down. So it's got to be any, starting with Van Gisbergen and Wallace and any of these drivers here. So who is your round of 8 sleeper?
We're not just talking about getting into the playoffs. We're talking about actually advancing, which is significantly harder. And you've got to advance through 2 rounds of elimination, which gets you down to an extremely tight level of competition. And I think there's really only one person that I can see doing that, and that's Bubba Wallace. And I'm not cheating by going at the minimum odds that we agreed to in advance. I genuinely think that Wallace has a lot to live up to with the car that he's in and how his teammates have performed and what his team expects of him. So I think that we're going to see a new Bubba Wallace. I think that we could see a new Bubba Wallace this year that is much more consistently competitive than we've seen more recently. So I think Wallace would be my pick of a sleeper top 8.
Yeah, and I could see that as well. Like, again, I did not at the beginning, our first question, put him in the playoffs, but he is definitely, again, he was my first driver out. And it's just the fact that, I don't know. I have to see him take that next step, though. Mm-hmm. And I know he's getting there. That's why this season, without a doubt, this is it. This has got to be his season to prove that in other words, he can't have any hiccups. He can't have a bad luck year. You can't have something happen that just, takes away from this, that, or the other thing. He has to have a straight line, no distractions. I've got all of this. I got a little bit of momentum from last year, and now you've got to put all your chips in and prove to Michael Jordan and everybody that you're capable and you're deserving of this position, because I think he's gone if he doesn't make the playoffs.
I don't disagree with you one bit. I completely agree with that sentiment. And again, especially if you look at how well his teammates have been performing in last year, you could put that down as a bad luck year. You can't have that 2 years in the sport and with a team of that caliber.
So let us know what you think. Let us know if you guys believe in Bubba Wallace or not. Do you think he's got the talent to make the final 8, let alone the playoffs? And if you do or don't, let us know why. Okay, so I don't think this is going to be a big surprise to you that I am going to take a driver that I mentioned last year that I thought could, matter of fact, I think I might have said this on maybe the last show or the first show that we did to kind of take a look ahead at, I don't know. I think this guy's ready to take that next step, and that's Austin Cindric.
Not a surprise.
Yeah. So Cindric there, as you see, at 100-1 to win the championship, but we're just giving you top sleeper to make the 8. And I think it's time now as well. I think it's time for Austin Cindric to prove what kind of top driver he is. And I think he's got the talent. Now it's time for him to prove it. And look, maybe with Logano going down, in a way, maybe that'll help Cindric go up. So
yeah,
who knows?
Cindric, I think, showed last year. Cindric last year started living up to the potential that we knew that he already had. He was excellent on road courses, fantastic on super speedways. He came out with the Cinderella story of winning in the Daytona 500 rookie year, getting that out of the way, and then was kind of off the reservation since then. But last year, I think we saw him put himself in situations where he was there to pick up the win. And it actually happened. And that's what you need to do in this sport. And he was doing it more consistently last year than we've seen in the Cup Series since he's arrived. So you'll notice I did not have him out of my championship or my playoff picks for sure. And that was with good reason. I agree with you. I think we're going to see Cindric continues taking that step up. I think we'll see him perform even better, probably at his best on road courses this year compared to other seasons in the Cup Series.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about who we believe will make the final 8. All right, so I will get started. And once again, as I said before, it's very hard because you have to, if you're going to bring in a driver or two that you think could take that next step, then a couple of the drivers have to go out. So interesting that out of the 8 drivers I have here, 5 of them, their last name begins with a B. So I'm going with Bell, Blaney, Bowman, Busch, Byron, Cindric, Elliott, and Larson. And so the 2 big names that are out are Logano and Hamlin. And again, with Hamlin, it's sort of like Keselowski. It's like, look, these drivers are getting older. If you're going to pick, drivers to kind of knock out and think you may have an off year, you would pick the older guys because you never know. I mean, at some point, the younger guys are going to overtake them. And maybe it's not this year, but at some point it's going to happen. Now some drivers could be smart enough and just, I'm going to retire before any of that stuff happens. And we've seen that. But Denny Hamlin, I think, is going to be, look, he did not do well once he got to the 8 last year. So I don't think it's like a major reach to think that if he didn't show anything in the final 8, that maybe he doesn't even get there this year. We also know he's very still talented enough to win a championship. But like I said, you got to knock out someone. And he was the guy along with Logano that were the 2 biggest names that I knocked out. Okay. So CJ, I'm going to go ahead and wait for you to give your final 8, and we could compare who we disagreed with.
I have 4 guys that begin with a B. I don't have them written in alphabetical order, though, so you'll have to bear with me. Christopher Bell, I've got in. I did keep Denny Hamlin in. Larson, obviously. Byron, obviously. Elliott, of course. I've got Reddick. And then my last 2 Bs are Blaney and Briscoe.
Oh, okay. So, by the way, that was another. Make sure we're to get this the right one. Okay. So, let's see. So I had Bell, I had Blaney, I had Larson, I had Byron, I had Elliott. Okay. So we have 3 different. So you have Hamlin, Reddick, and Briscoe.
That's correct.
And I went with Cindric, Busch, and Bowman. Okay, so those are our changes. And I could probably have maybe add not just Hamlin and Logano, but Reddick. He did make the final 4, and I guess that's the thing with Reddick is he really had that run last year. But the thing that I think was, and maybe not surprising because this is what happens, and we see this all the time, really, is that he has this great run going into the playoffs. And then as soon as the playoffs started, it's like a switch. And he did not do well for a couple of rounds. And he was pretty fortunate that he was able to get to the point where he had the win at Homestead, which got him in to the final 4. So he has got to he's got to get back to that guy that he was for most part of the second half of the regular season. And we know he can. We know he's more than capable of winning a championship as well. And where is his odds right now? Again, Reddick is sitting there at he's at that 8-1 number. which I think is a little bit. I mean, I don't think that he should be ahead of Chase Elliott, but again, Reddick did have a better season than Elliott last year. So
yeah, I think we saw Reddick. Like you said, he's got the talent. Would not be a surprise to be a champion at some point in this series. Certainly continue to win races and perform very well in advance in the playoffs. Last year, I think we saw a couple of instances of him not really being able to shoulder the stress that comes with racing at the front every single week and having that pressure to advance. Hopefully he deals with that a little bit more fluently in 2025 and is able to get that off of his shoulders and have that not affect his on-track performance, so he can be a little bit more consistent in the playoffs.
And with Briscoe, of course, he made the dramatic way to get in, winning, and gets in, but he really didn't do anything, which is why he was immediately knocked out. But now he's with a better team, and you would think along with that, it should come not just the expectations, but that he would deliver. So, yeah, I think the only thing with Briscoe that would keep me away from, say, betting on him to win a championship is to go from 100 to 1 to 18, basically because you changed teams. That's a little too much for me. I think he deserves to be like more of like the 25 to 30 range, and then I might actually take him around that. But 18 to 1, that's a little rich for me.
I mean, also look at the car that he's going into. He's going into Martin Truex Jr.'s seat, and Truex didn't win a race last year. And so I think the odds are not congruent with what his potential is right now. I think they're too low for Chase Briscoe to be a champion. I think as the season goes on, though, as he gets more accustomed to Gibbs and he gets more accustomed to the equipment, it's going to get easier for him and we're going to see him improve. But like the same conversation we had about Reddick, it might be the first time where he finds himself in a situation that's as pressure packed as what Reddick faced last year, and how is he going to respond to that? So I think you've got to get some leeway in the odds for that, and they're certainly right now not giving it to you, so I wouldn't advise taking it.
Okay, now which driver is your championship sleeper? So CJ is going to go first, and now we're going to start with Chase Briscoe and work your way. And you got a much bigger list of drivers now to choose from as far as who you think can win the championship. And that is going to be basically none of these guys, because they're not going to qualify as sleepers. And then the only other one that's not a single is Elliott. So anybody from Chase Briscoe down. Let's see. And by looking at your 8 picks, let's see. Well, Briscoe looks like the obvious one here. So would that be it? Would you go right there at 18 with Briscoe?
No, I would not actually.
Okay.
I think if we get somebody who's going to be a sleeper
championship medal kind of guy. Okay.
Yeah, they're going to be somebody that comes that has, like the year we talked about with Logano, where things break their direction. It's a little bit unexpected, a little bit against the run of form. And I think the two guys that fit that are championship capable are Kyle Busch and Alex Bowman. I think they need some luck to go their way. Both of them need to improve in 2025 in order to be there. But at the same time, either one of them, if they get those breaks and those things happen, they could easily find themselves into the Final Four, if not even winning in Phoenix and taking the championship.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and write down Kyle Busch for you since you're tied, because my pick is Bowman.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, so Bowman is right there at 35 to 1, and again, not a surprise for me because I have him in my final 8. The thing with Bowman is that last year, as we saw for the first time, and it was such a shame what happened to him. Not because it just allowed Joey Logano to go on and win a championship, but he was racing the best of his career. I mean, he had shown consistency for the first time. He wasn't, like you said before, which we were used to seeing, where Bowman would just win races when nobody expected, and it wouldn't even be a dominating win. He would just kind of come up there and steal the win late, and hey, I've got to win. And then he'd go ahead and disappear again for another 4 or 5 weeks, and maybe you see him with some other top 10s or whatever, but no consistency until last year. And that is the little bit of hope I think he would have, because that, and especially because, first of all, he did it when the season began, and then he did it at the end of the season in the playoffs. I mean, he was one of the most consistent drivers in the playoffs up until that time where he got disqualified. So he could have won a championship if he wasn't disqualified. And so why wouldn't I kind of pick up where he left off as a 35-1 driver, as a sleeper, not as a top driver, but in sleeper territory? I think he's a definite play. So
yeah, I agree with absolutely everything you said. To me, he's still got that, and same as Busch, they've got that kind of light switch type of approach. Like if the switch is on this year, either one of them can do it. If the switch is off, it's going to be a hard season. And we saw that for Busch last year. But yeah, I think Bowman showed a lot of his capabilities and potential for the future last year, and hopefully he is filling those shoes out and is able to live up to it in the years to come.
Okay, so now it's Final Four time, and this one, I believe, I'm going to make my pick here. So I go or you go? I go.
I think you go.
No, you go. No, I go. I go. Yes, you went with Blaney and Busch and Bowman, and then I went. Okay, so who will make the championship 4? Okay, so we're going to basically eliminate 4 from our 8, and the 4 that I'm going to go with, and this is where I'm not going to have no surprises. So because I had a couple of surprises in there, Bowman, Busch, Cindric. So that means I got to take one good driver out. Okay, so I've got, out of the 5, Bell, Blaney, Byron, Elliott, Larson. I got to take one of those drivers out, and I'm going to take Larson out. So, and a couple of reasons for that. One is because he's not going to be my championship pick. Second, I do think I agreed with you with Elliott. I think this is going to be, he's just too talented, and he's got to be back. So yeah, I think taking Elliott this year, not necessarily in the 500, he hasn't been necessarily great in that, but yeah, you might be getting good odds early in the season on Chase Elliott in some of these races. And I think you should take advantage of him because he's going to win, and you want to be able to get him before those odds drop. And then Byron has just been way too consistent lately, and he's younger and he's hungrier and he hasn't won yet. And then obviously with Bell, he was my pick last year to win the championship. So I'm not taking him out of the 4 this year. And Blaney, not just because he's my favorite driver, but how do you not go with Blaney, unless you do, but how do you not go with Blaney after he nearly comes this close to winning back-to-back championships? So anyway, that's my explanation of why I have to dump someone. So I'm going to dump Larson. But of course, that's just nitpicking. So those are my 4.
Do we have the exact same 4? I've got Bell, Byron, Elliott, and Blaney.
Okay. Yes, we do. Wow.
Hard to believe. Maybe not. Byron, like you said, way too good. He's way too good, way too consistent, young, hungry. I think he's going to get there again. Bell, the exact same thing. He was fantastic last year. I think he is championship material. I think he's going to be there again. In fact, I even looked up, I think he's been in 3 Final Fours in a row now. So I looked up to see, like, okay, has anybody ever done 4? Like, is he going to go against the statistics there if I put him in the Final Four again? And it turns out, no, there have been a couple that have done 4 or even 5 in a row. So I didn't feel like Bell would be on the cusp yet of being too big to fail. Blaney, like you said, how can you not, when he almost won 2 championships in a row? I do think that this is the year that Penske's domination or championship streak ends, though, and thus Elliott is my 4th choice.
All right, and Elliott's your pick.
Elliott is my pick for the champion.
And I'm going back to Bell. It worked for me 2 years ago when I went with Blaney. He didn't win. I went back to Blaney and he won. So I got Bell last year, and I'm going back to Bell again this year. And again, he's sitting there at 5-1, and Elliott's at 11. And I'll tell you right now, even though I'm taking Bell, I'm not taking him at 5-1 in February. But I would take Elliott at 11-1 in February because you may not get that number again the rest of the season. So remember, he's got name recognition. So the fans are going to flood the betting markets if he starts to show that he's got that championship in him again, the ability to win a championship. And so you'll be very, very thankful, believe it or not, that you got 11-1 if Elliott does go on and get off to a good start and then makes the Final Four with a shot to win it all. So there you go. Those are our predictions for the 2025 season. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you have for any of these questions that we have here. So if you want to give your official picks in any of these questions, whichever one you feel most confident with, because we'll hold you to it, and we hold ourselves accountable. So what should make you any different? And then next week we will preview the Daytona 500. I think one of the cool things about having the Daytona 500 as the first race is we don't really have to have a ton of like research and handicapping. It's pretty simple. I mean, you know who the better super speedway drivers are. It doesn't make it any easier to pick the winner though, obviously, because of the winners who have taken this race. But at some point it's going to come back around and we're going to start getting a little bit more consistency. I mean, look, William Byron won last year. I don't know whether or not that was like Byron is considered, he's not, one of the top super speedway drivers, but hey, he's got a Daytona 500 win now. So he's not that far behind now. But next week is when we're going to break down the field and that'll get us started. And then we've got Atlanta right after that, right?
Yes.
So we really don't have to worry about a whole lot of tough handicapping because the first couple of weeks at least are going to make it easier for us when we go to a couple of super speedway setups.
Two super speedways and then a road course out in Texas before we get to perhaps what you might call the first real track and arguably the most important track, which would be Phoenix, which is that fourth race of the year. And like you said, for the preview of Daytona, it's not too difficult to handicap Daytona Talladega at this point, as you said, which is what makes the current odds for the winner just so off. And so baffling. So if you're watching this now, definitely take a scan of those odds today. I'm willing to bet they change. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they won't. I'm willing to bet they change before next week, though, especially with Larson. He's not been great. How do you have him as a favorite? I just get it. Maybe for pole, yes, sure. Put him on there. But for the race win at the Daytona 500, he hasn't been great at super speedways. I question that.
Yeah, and we'll try to also give you some insight into things like top 3 and top 5. I don't think that's something that I would recommend for a super speedway race, though, because there's so much luck involved. Even someone like Ryan Blaney, it's really just all about, does he get into any issues? Mm-hmm. I would think he would be the safest driver out of all of them to if you wanted to go with the top 3 or a top 5, where you're not going to get a lot of odds, so you have to spend more money, but that's what you're betting against. You're betting against the fact that he's not going to get into any trouble, because if he doesn't, it would be a shock if he wasn't in the top 5, and he could also be in the top 3. But the crazy thing is also about a setup like Daytona is you could be second in the final lap and end out outside the top 5, so you're never safe. So you do have to deal with that, but that's on next week's show. All right. So you are going to, what do you have on rotowire.com now? Anything, between this week and next week before you preview the 500?
No, we'll have the Daytona 500. Well, actually we'll have the duels previews up probably Wednesday or Thursday of next week. Then we'll have the Daytona 500 preview up on Friday. And then after Sunday's race, we'll have the first, NASCAR barometer of the year on rotowire.com.
And the duels, again, that's when?
Thursday night. What day is that? That's the 13th, day before Valentine's Day.
Oh, is that when that is? When is Valentine's?
Friday.
Oh, the 14th. Okay. So we've got, so really they don't do anything at all until then. Isn't
No,
that
they're not.
weird?
Yeah, they're not even hitting the track, I think, for practicing
Why?
buying until like the 12th. It used to be that they would spend, when they were doing the Clash at Daytona, they would have the Clash like, I don't know, the 8th Saturday night, and then they'd qualify for Daytona 500 on the 9th, and then they'd have the duels on Thursday with the race on Sunday. I guess with the moving of the Clash, they tried to condense the time spent at Daytona, oddly enough. So they're not even going to hit the track, I don't think, until Wednesday the 12th.
Yeah, see, that's not good. I mean, if you get started and then you just disappear for a week, I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, the Clash was also not competing with any real sports, I would say, last weekend. We don't have the Super Bowl, but yet they decided to put it on at what, 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, school night. Again with the
races.
There was plenty of opportunity to gain more viewership there, I think.
Okay. So anyway, let us know if you have any questions or anything like that regarding the duels. And basically, I know you can wager on the duels. Once again, I'm not sure why you'd want to, but hey, it's I guess you got a better chance. I guess you may have a better chance to make some money on the duels. Maybe. I know it's a little bit more normalized, but and you're not going to have anything at all. Do you have, as far as the duels, like what would you suggest?
Yeah, I'll have a duel.
That's right, you will. Okay.
And I'll include this year, and I did it for the Clash, and I'll do it for every race going forward, a best bet section. So we'll not only do the favorite, we might pick a long shot. We'll scan the odds, see if there's any good values, maybe the top 3s, top 5s, top 10s, things like that. Whatever the odds present that is interesting and perhaps worth considering or thinking about, or maybe even avoiding. You'll see that in my columns this year in my previews. And we will have one for the duels. It'll probably be up on Wednesday, if not very early on Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday. Okay. And that's next week.
Next week.
I have to keep checking because it's like, how can it not be this week?
It is weird.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Let us know what you think. Subscribe, like, and share. We appreciate that. Again, that gives us the best chance of succeeding here so we can keep putting these videos out. I will also have a video. Matter of fact, I don't know. What would you suggest when I do my qualifying video? Should I be doing that like right after the duels?
After the duels. Yeah. Anytime Friday or Saturday. Definitely before the duels.
So that's what I'll do. That'll be the first one. And as I said before, we're going to give it a try here on our new channel and hope that we get somewhere with it. And if we do, then I'll just keep it going. If not, then I don't know. We'll have to rethink it. But that'll be the next broadcast. We will take a look at post-qualifying after the duels. And then we'll see you for our Daytona 500 preview in a couple of weeks. So for CJ Redoon, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in here to our NASCAR coverage on Proline TV. And if you're into football, like the Super Bowl, you can check out our show that we're recording in about an hour, actually. It's going to be our official Super Bowl preview show. We've got a bunch of handicappers on the channel that are all going to chime in and give their picks and Super Bowl props and all that stuff. So if you really like to know exactly what to wager on all game long with the Super Bowl and how to be invested in it all game long, check out our show, the Playbook Against the Spread podcast that's coming up, and it'll be posted here on the website, on the channel, the YouTube channel, probably around Wednesday early evening. And then we'll have our horse racing coverage on Thursday. We already had our golf coverage a couple of days ago yesterday, Tuesday. And don't forget F1 coverage is also coming up, but we still have 2 more months for that. Right, CJ?
Yep. End of March for Formula One.
Okay. So there you go. We'll see you next time.